It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. My first guest is Armando Iannucci. He and I talked in 2013. Armando quit a doctoral program in Milton to become a television comedy writer, and it turns out that was a good call. He worked on about half of the great British comedy shows of the last 20 years, from The Day Today to I'm Alan Partridge to The Thick of It. The shows share a bitterly satirical perspective and a fondness for the way that language can twist, bend, and break, along with the ideas it contains. In 2012, he started working on Our Side of the Atlantic. He created and wrote the HBO series Veep. It's about the desperate, ineffectual denizens in and around the vice presidency. He was the showrunner on Veep for the first 4 years. It's still one of the best TV comedies ever, and I'm not just saying that. Veep's basically gotten so many Emmys, Golden Globes, SAG Awards, and whatever that Wikipedia gave the awards, just the awards, their own page. Here's a clip from the show's second season. The vice president, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, is hitting home runs on the campaign trail. But as this montage demonstrates, her facility for empty promises and slogans isn't quite boundless.
North Dakota, we can do this together. There is no I in freedom. Freedom is not me-dom. It's we-dom! I visited a dance studio in Hartford, Connecticut. When I was there, I met a brave firefighter in a wheelchair. Back then, we didn't know what HIV positive was, which meant he had to lose his kidney. He shook my hand, and he said, "You don't remember me, but I am your grandpa."
Armando Iannucci, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Nice to be back.
So I guess my first question is, I know that you have long closely followed British politics. And in fact, you occasionally appear as a political commentator on actual news programs in the UK.
Yes, which is very strange because occasionally I'm working myself up to a joke. And as I say something straight, the audience applauds. And then I realize it's a different sort of audience to a comedy show.
Well, you could also be describing the audience of The Daily Show. So,
all right.
So here's my question for you. Did you also follow American politics, or was it relatively new to you?
No, I did. I'm a bit of a political geek, and I've always, we're 5 or 6 hours out. So I would stay up very, very late in the UK during American election nights to watch the results, even when I was about 14 or 15. That's a kind of strange person you're speaking to. And I think there's something about the drama, and also because American politics affects beyond America. So this is important stuff that's happening. I've not been, when I was much younger, I wasn't really a political activist as such, but I was fascinated by the theatre of politics.
I'm trying to do the math in my head, Armando, of you as a 14-year-old staying up to watch the election returns in the United States. Like those, I had to stay up to watch those, and I live on the west coast of the United States. Like,
oh, really?
You're talking about like 5 o'clock in the morning.
By the time you vote, hasn't the president already been elected and inaugurated?
Well, I don't live in Hawaii.
And carried out his first year of. I know it's weird. I don't have an explanation for it other than I've always found it fascinating, and I've been fascinated by American history and political history. Right from the 1950s onwards, and I'm one of the few people to have read all 4,000-page volumes of Robert Caro's unfinished biography of Lyndon Johnson. I've often had to explain to some of the American cast how the American Constitution works. Whenever they've been asking about, House legislation versus Senate and majorities and supermajorities and things like that, I've kind of enjoyed explaining it to them.
How are the, I say, inefficiencies, but you could also say bumblings or structural brokennesses of your government different than those of my government?
Well, your government is a work of genius in how complicated a mechanism it has to ensure that nothing happens. And you've taken 200 years to get it absolutely right, but I think you've now arrived at that state where you're at absolute zero.
Initially we didn't have the filibuster, the really full-throated filibuster that we have now.
Yeah. So I think you've now perfected it to an art form about how not to do anything on a daily basis. Whereas the British government sort of stumbles along. I think the intention has always been there to try and do something, but through sheer kind of exhaustion and then lack of relevance, the will has just been sucked out of us so that we don't do anything.
I want to play a clip from The Thick of It, which is your British show that in many ways shares a sensibility with Veep. So in this clip, basically on the show, you're looking at a series of protagonists who are all ministers in a governmental department, which is essentially functionless. And they're constantly in a state of public relations crisis. Mm-hmm. So in this scene, the minister, whose name is Hugh Abbott, has just come into the office. He's flustered from an interview with a reporter. Mm-hmm. And the reason is that interview has implicated him in a real estate scandal that could hurt a new housing bill. Yeah. And all of this has taken place over the course of just a couple of minutes. Mm-hmm. Let's take a listen.
How was that?
What is happening? That was supposed to be a nice interview.
What on earth did you say to her?
I think I denied being a racist. God, I hope so.
You didn't say that you have lots of black friends. You didn't go...
Of course not. Well, I haven't got any.
What did you say about the office?
I said I wasn't aware. Someone else was handling the sale and I wasn't aware of any offers.
Okay, so what's the line on this then?
I don't know. What is the line on this?
I don't know. Don't look at me.
But we need to have a line or two.
Okay, we got movement. We got a break.
What? Oh. What?
The flat's sold.
What?
To the Asian family.
What?
For 40 grand below the asking price. That's all right.
Jesus, what is happening?
Malcolm.
Yeah?
We're too late.
What?
All the papers have got a hold of it.
Wait, this is madness. I just own a flat. I haven't raped somebody.
Yeah, they're calling the scandal Flatgate.
Scandal?
Well, that's crap. I mean, it's a crap name for a scandal.
That is just this sort of abstract terror of everything happening in the world. Like nothing could ever go right.
And also it's made worse by the fact that everything is recordable now. You know, you go out into the street and get in a car, but someone has filmed you on their phone getting out into the street and going into a car. Everyone, anything you say now, there's no such thing as a private meeting. You know, as Mitt Romney discovered when he was speaking to fundraisers about, the 47%. There was someone recording it all and then posting it up on the internet, and it's all around the world, and before you know it, you're defined by it. It's the equivalent of penguins falling over in a funny way on YouTube. It's like everything politicians do now are just go viral.
It seems like you are particularly interested in the relationship between the way politicians and their cohorts try and control their image and control their perception by the world, and the kind of ineffectuality is built into the system that means that they really can't control their actual actions.
Oh yeah, and it's also the ultimate illusion, which is that you can control events. You can't. Events are arbitrary. They can't be predicted, and they can't be avoided. But the idea that you could have, that you can set the agenda, by today we're going to discuss health and tomorrow we're going to talk about schooling. Well, no, you're not. If a volcano blows up and you've got to deal with that, or there's suddenly a strike, or there's you have no control. And it's this. I think it's also tied in with the fact that politicians think that they are powerful. And actually, political power has, over the last 10 or 15 years, diminished. Politicians are less and less influential than they once were. We are far more influenced by, the large companies like Facebook and Microsoft and Apple than we are by, the Treasury or the Department of Education. So in this, I think, politicians and politics are going through this bizarre existential crisis where more and more people can see them, but can see that they've got less and less power.
It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. I'm talking with Armando Iannucci. He created the HBO series Veep, which is entering its 6th season later this month. One of the things that binds together both your shows about politics and a lot of your past work is this enthusiasm for, I guess, I think I called it broken language in the introduction, something like that. And I want to play a clip from one of the first shows you worked on, a really amazing show called The Day Today, that I think is a really perfect illustration of this. So it is a news program, and in this scene from the show, the anchor, whose name is Collaterally Sisters, describes the day in finance.
There was a big smell of fear in the city today when leisure conglomerate Bottington Fiasco fell 10%, leaving the cup open for a hammer bid from Silica Fist Fruit at 12. There were no dollars today. I'm Collaterally Sisters. Onto the money markets. Quick look at the currency kidney. There's a lot of pressure there on the Bundesvessel, leading to a slight inflammation in the exchange tract, causing a negative flow of waste pounds across all international membranes. So in summary then, Seven's a bit younger. Chris.
That was from about 20 years ago, that show, and it was based on the fact that if you slightly closed your eyes and closed your ears when you were watching a news show, as long as they sounded serious, it didn't really matter what they said. That's the thing. As long as you preserve this air of talking like that and everything you're saying sounds important, even though all you're saying is I'm holding a bottle of Peroni beer in my hand, and it doesn't matter because we're so convinced by the tone that it feels authentic, and therefore you tell yourself it must be authentic. I'm not sure we'd be able to do a show like that now because I don't think we actually believe the media the way we do. We don't see the media as authoritative as we used to.
It's interesting because that function of essentially controlling tone publicly, but not controlling content, and in fact often getting it completely wrong, is the narrative driving force of about a third of the episodes of Veep.
Right, yes.
The vice president goes in public somewhere and says things in a way that is correct.
Yes.
But may or may not be saying something that is just utter nonsense.
But isn't that also the case that politicians have to do that? A microphone is thrust in their face and they feel that unless they say something, they will look foolish. And so they've just got to open their mouth and just hope to God that the right words come out. And keep talking, and the longer they talk, the more time they have to think about something that they can say at the end of the sentence. And it's that thing that politicians have of knowing not to pause. If a politician spoke like this, they'd be destroyed because they sound like they haven't got a firm opinion. Whereas if a politician spoke like this and there was absolutely no pause in the sentences, even though the sentences never end and are going in many directions at once, and actually you cannot really define what it is they're saying because the sentence never seems to come to an end, but seems to have this pulse and this emphasis, which makes it look like the politician knows precisely what it is they're saying and what kind of reaction to get from the audience, then you believe it. And that goes on all the time. So it's just a performance. It's just a mode of speech that they're trained to do.
Which is, Julia Louis-Dreyfus has this beautiful smile, and she'll be cornered on the show, and she will just show that smile, and we, the audience, know that what that smile means is I have no idea what's going on.
Yes.
This is a disaster.
Yes.
I am trapped.
Get me out of here. Blow the walls down. Get me out of here. Get me a helicopter. I don't care. Dig a tunnel.
Has spending time with the people that you are writing about for this show, and I don't mean that literally. None of these people none of these characters are literal analogs for people in real life, but just spending times in the corridors of power.
Yeah.
Has it changed your perspective on those people? I mean, do you find yourself reacting to the news as an outsider differently now than you did 20 years ago?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I spending time with these people has helped me be able to, hopefully, write them as three-dimensional, flesh and blood, warts and all, virtues and vices, personalities, as recognizable people that we can identify with. And that's part of the reason I have been spending a lot of time in DC and talking to people. I have found that over the last 20 years, the more I've looked at how politics works, the more I've come to sympathize with the politician. In that I do believe a lot of people go into politics with genuine principles and ideals and aspirations. A lot of that gets knocked out of them in that they turn into this person who almost automatically has to compromise in order to get anything done. But I also feel, the more I know about how politics works, that the less I would ever want to be in that situation. I feel not just we the media, but we the public put so many expectations on our politicians now. They're not allowed to make mistakes. They're not allowed to go on holiday. They're not allowed to earn any money. They're not allowed to change their mind. They're not allowed to have a private life. We've actually made politics impossible to be conducted sensibly and efficiently anymore. And I think that's a great shame. But it's something that I think I've come to develop. It doesn't mean to say I'm letting them off the hook, and it doesn't mean to say that I won't want to kind of examine any terrible decisions they've made or the bad consequences of any of their actions. But I do hold out a certain amount of sympathy for them.
I want to talk briefly about some of the truly spectacular profanity that occurs on both Veep and The Thick of It.
Yeah.
When you conceived of The Thick of It, which came first, was just awe-inspiring vulgarity and profanity one of the original elements of the pitch?
No, it wasn't. I just wanted to make something that looked realistic and that captured what was then the Labour government under Tony Blair, captured that quite authentically. Now, Blair's government was a very macho, testosterone-fueled, male bonding type of environment. There were lots of 40-something guys who drank lots of beer and who did swear an awful lot. Now, swearing, I think, is actually quite dull. It's very repetitive. It's boring because it's the same word again and again and again. If we wanted to capture the swearing element because that made it feel real, but I wanted it to be interesting. I didn't want viewers to be turned off by the swearing. So that meant we as writers had to come up with creative phrases for swearing. Normally it's not the swear word itself, but it's the phrase, it's the very graphic threat of physical violence that accompanies it, that makes it. And it was really just our way of making it, breathing life into that kind of language and trying to make it more interesting and give it a kind of persona of its own. And then that bled over when I was doing Veep. I did a bit of swearing research in Washington and, the Pentagon is just one swear word after another, because it's just all military people, and they swear like there's no tomorrow.
They swear like sailors and also soldiers.
Yeah.
And also airmen.
Whereas in the State Department, there's very little swearing. You see, it's all full of diplomats, and it's just frowned upon. The West Wing, lots of swearing, because that's a high pressure. I think there's probably more swearing under Democratic presidents than there is under Republican presidents, unless the Republican president is from a business background as opposed to a sort of fundamentalist or religious background. So in Veep, there are certain characters who swear and there are others who don't, and we're very clear as to who those should be and what the degree of swearing should be.
The vice president's very keen on talking about her lady balls.
Yes, well, that's very much, she belongs to that school of a female politician has to be more male than any male politician in order to get any credibility in Washington. So she has that kind of element.
Armando, do you have in the writer's room, this is what I imagine. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I imagine you have one of those pinboard walls with 3x5 cards, which are probably called something else in the UK, like 10 centimeter by 8 centimeter cards or whatever. But you just cards, and each card has an unspeakable vulgarity on it.
No.
You move them around.
The walls are absolutely barren. No, it just all comes out of our heads. and also, that kind of implies we have, 50 different swear words, and then we just organize them into different, various combinations out of those. And I think the swearing is only funny when it seems to appear organically it seems to capture the emotion of the speech that it turns up in. So they're very much, what's the phrase when you have a suit tailor made for you? They're very bespoke. They're very bespoke. Gentleman's swearing. Yes.
Is there anything that in coming up with an exclamation, put down, or other vulgarity, you and your team have you and your team in coming up with one of these ever come up with something that surprised you, like amazed you?
Well, stuff comes out, and I just think, these writers are really, very gentle, quiet people. One of the gentlest and quietest of them came up with a line, something like, Sue says to the vice president, Congressman Furlong would like to see you. And she says, well, I would rather set fire to my vulva. So that's a no. And I just think, I have no idea where that came from. I don't even know what the thought processes are that allows that those words to come together.
Well, Armando, I really appreciate you taking the time to come back on our show.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Very nice to be back.
Armando Iannucci from 2013. He created the show Veep. He ran it for the first 4 seasons, and it's still going strong. Season 6 premieres April 18th. Armando's newest project is a movie set to be released later this year. It's called The Death of Stalin. Steve Buscemi's in it. That's all I need to know. Just tell me where to buy my ticket.